Yeah, I'm going to talk about how to deal with negative feedback and other things for a podcast. Here we go. Hi, my name is Jeff, and I was one of the hosts of the Once Upon a Time fan podcast that you may have never have heard about, but it did pretty well, and I was really happy with the way it turned out. And my wife and I really had a fun time, and you can't replicate it sometimes. It's like at that time for that show and that podcast, it was great. When things went well, it was great. When things went south, it was awful. It was just so bad. So, anyway, let's get into it. When you're a podcaster, you are the media. I'm just telling you, it's the truth. Some people, when they get into like a audio podcast or a video podcast or whatever, they just think, oh, I need to pay my dues. No, you are telling the world about a television show or a movie or a sport or whatever it is. You are the media. So you need to act like it. You need to ask for things that could be, like, for instance, the television show Once Upon a Time. I found the email address to the department at ABC to request a set of the DVDs, the Blu-rays for the season so I could review it for the podcast. I would have never thought about that, but somebody else that was another podcaster did that, and I said that's a great idea, and it worked. I emailed them. I said, this is our podcast, this is our listenership, here's the site, you can check it out. And so I said, can I have a review copy of the Blu-rays to review on the show? They sent it to me, and I did. You have to kind of change your mindset from, oh, I'm just, a little podcaster or whatever. You're the media. You're part of the media because you are telling people and reviewing this show. So you're the media, act like it. You also need to count the cost. And a lot of people think, oh, I'm going to get a podcast like this other person and I'm going to make $1 million. No, nope. You have to count the cost. There is a lot to it, especially, if you want to do a weekly podcast. There's a lot, because then you make decisions about, are you going to host by yourself? Do you want to co-host? Are you going to edit? Are you not going to edit? The more steps and the more things that you put into play, the longer it's going to take. And so if you're okay with it, perfect. But if you're not, you really have to kind of think about what you're willing to jump into. We were crazy because at first it was a weekly podcast, and then it went to 2 shows a week. And I didn't edit much. I only edited when I missaid something, like a fact about the show or something, and I knew I had to go in. And then I remember I left big pauses after. So when I looked at the audio file, I went and I found that. It's like, oh, okay, here it is. And then I cut it out. But I normally try my best not to say the word and I tried so that I wouldn't have to edit. That's a kind of a great tip. I don't know if you've ever done Toastmaster General where they teach you public speaking. And that's what they had a can with like quarters in it. And when you did your speech, mentally, you think that silence is a bad thing. And so you just use filler words like, well, different things. And they would shake the can. So you would try your best to do a speech and then not hear the can shake with the quarters in it, and it upset everybody. So anyway, there you go. See, I'm not going to edit. You need to count the cost. It's a lot of time. It's a lot of effort. And at first, nobody's going to listen. Nobody's going to. They have to find you. One of the things I did is I did a blog post about Once Upon a Time. And once that started churning, I said, okay. So I did a test run for something. And then that's when I jumped into the podcast. It was still tough at first, but it started to build over time. You need to have 2 brains. when you do a podcast about a television show specifically, or it could be anything, sports or whatever. And the brain is one is you as a person. Then there's also the brain of the showrunner. Now, there was a lot of podcasters during Once Upon a Time, and some of them were religious people, and they felt certain things about certain things in the show, and they had problems with certain things of the show. And I remember we went to a convention, and the showrunners of the show said, we're going to have a gay character coming because we want to reflect life on the world in our show. And so I said, it's coming. That's it. They've said that. When there was a gay character in Once Upon a Time, some podcasters just had a problem. And I didn't. So however you feel as a podcaster person, you have to lay that aside because you're doing a podcast about a television show and the showrunner has a different direction. There were some podcasters that quit because there was a ship that you understand ship, two people really care about each other on the show, but their ship was dashed for another ship. And so this other podcast, I really enjoyed the podcast, the other podcast, and they just quit because of that. So there's different reasons. We quit the podcast toward the end because we were just too busy. We ceased production, and there were others that continued. There was another podcast where the host basically said, we don't want to do it anymore. And some of the listeners stepped up and took over. And everybody was agreeable, and they took over the other folks' hosting duties for this podcast. So there's a lot of ways that you could handle that. But the way we handled it was we just got too busy and we just stopped. So, yes, competition. Oh, let's talk about competition. Now, as I mentioned in an earlier episode about these podcasting lessons learned, for a while, we were the only Once Upon a Time podcast. Obviously, that's pretty good because if people like the show, then they're looking for a podcast and they're going to find you, which, okay, it's good. But competition sometimes can breed a little stress. It's like, well, they did it a little better than me, or I wish I would have whatever. It took some time for me. But what I realized is that competition was like radio in the LA market in the 70s. There were two big radio stations at the time in Los Angeles, California. It was KMET and KLOS. And the great thing about it, each radio station handled different things differently for the audience that enjoyed rock and roll. And I remember that and I said, okay, and it took me a while. I wasn't thrilled. But I said, okay, we podcasters are presenting different things in different ways. And the benefit is going to be for the listener. And once I figured that out, I went, okay, we're good. We will continue on. And yeah, there were some points where I would go, man, I should have mentioned that, or that's a good point. I didn't see that. But I mentioned other things that they didn't. So it was kind of like a puzzle. And we all connected for the same show differently. There were times where people liked another podcast and then they would come and trash us on iTunes and just leave a stinky review about us. And then I looked at the name and then I found the name on the other podcast and I go, oh, okay. So we hurt their feelings because we were doing a podcast that may have more listeners than them or whatever. But I think competition is a good thing. It's hard, when you're in there just working so hard to get listeners, and other people may get other listeners. And that's when you do crazy things like when you drive from Orange County, California, up to Steveston, where they filmed Once Upon a Time, and you do a live broadcast from the cafe in Steveston, which is also Storybrooke. That's the kind of things that you do. But the listeners benefit from that. Just okay. We're coming up to the end here. So, dealing with negative feedback. It's when you put your heart and soul into something and someone just has a bad day and they just want to take it out on you and or your podcast. It's tough. It's a tough thing, man. It's not easy, but it's going to happen. Life is about how you react because bad things are going to happen to you. I remember there was this guy who was doing these stickers for your car, and they were really incredible. And this guy was very artistic. And so I said, I'm going to promote you on the podcast. And he goes, oh man, that's great. So for the first, I said, I'm going to hit you right after the intro and all that. And so I did, and it was a rather long intro to the show before we get onto the meat. And there was some lady that just lit me up about that. She goes, I'm never going to listen to you again. And I'm so, you just talk forever. You don't get to the point. And da, 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 da. And I'm thinking, she didn't know that in particular, that episode, I was helping out this other guy that I really liked his work. See, she was thinking it was all about her. And I was trying to help this other guy. And so it's sometimes you have to, when you get feedback like that, you have to stop. Just stop. Because with all these different things and social media, it's instantaneous. And once you feel that emotion just rise in you, you can reply, you can react, you can just let them have it. But it's better to just stop. One of the things that I tried to use as best I could is I waited a day, 24 hours. Nothing is you're not going to change anything. So just wait 24 hours. Second thing, what's the other person going through? I didn't know that. I don't know. They had to get things off their chest. There was so many emails, so many messages, so many iTunes reviews that people were just let me have it. And I kept thinking, well, what kind of life do they have? I don't know. And maybe they're feeling better by getting that off their chest. I don't, but they do. So I I tried my best to extend grace to them. And believe me, I got upset a lot, but I know that replying and lighting them up and getting into a war is not really going to help the situation. I knew that we were doing good work and we were talking about a show that we really enjoyed, and that's the end result. And they didn't like it. And, I never said this, but in my mind, I said, there's plenty of other choices. and there was the one that took over the number one spot after us. And you can listen to them. You can listen to all kinds. There's a plethora. So anyway, negative comments are going to come. Don't react automatically. Let it go. Sometimes you may need more than 24 hours. Sometimes you need 48 hours. But just let it go for a bit. And the other thing is that in that negative comment, there may be gold for you. Because remember, we talked about the posse, and there's different things that you need input from other people. And sometimes, I know it's hard, sometimes in the negative feedback, there is something that you need to do. And it's going to be helpful. You don't want to hear it, you don't want to read it, you don't even want to do it, but it could be helpful. Now, when you come up with the idea of your podcast, you come up with the DNA. What is it? Like one of the DNAs that I wanted was emotion. And I wanted to end on a emotional connective note. And that's why I would say, we're going to send big love out to you, because big love is so big that you can't hold it all in. And so you have to give it away. So give it away. And that's how I ended the show. And that was fantastic. And I remember there was a tweet that Josh Dallas sent out, and had hashtag big love. Now, certainly it could have been connected to Jennifer Goodwin, who was in Big Love. But I just possibly have a feeling that he may have been listening to us and understood what that meant. So, negative feedback, it's going to come. It's going to come, and just expect it and get a plan together how you're going to react to it. And I hope that you just take time and don't just reply in the moment. It's not a good idea. It's never a good idea. Let's bring it in for a landing here. Here is what I want you to do. If you've never podcasted before, whether it's on YouTube or audio or whatever, I want to give you some advice. If you're thinking, I don't know enough, I know, fair enough. Okay, there's things that you can learn, but I'm going to give you what a lot of people have said, just start. Just start. And here's one of the main reasons why. I want you to look at your thumbprint. I want you to look at your fingerprint. Just look at it. Do you know your fingerprint is unique? It's unique. Your fingerprint is different than anyone else. And that's why the police and others use it to identify people, because it's unique. You're like no one else. Your life is like no one else. The path that you've taken, the decisions that you've made are like no one else. And so that is what makes you a great podcaster. Because even if we do the same subject, you're going to take it from your vantage point, your point of view, your life. And that's great. That's what we need. Because if it's all the same people doing the same topics, it's boring. But we need you. We need you to podcast. And whether it's on a vlog or on YouTube or whatever, we need you involved. And if you've never podcasted before, there's a lot of great YouTube videos that you can search for, how to get started, that kind of stuff. But I want to recommend Dave Jackson from the School of Podcasting. He's great. And you can go search through his site and you can find some great videos and lots of great information. He has a very fantastic podcasting show and podcast that teaches you things and has interviews with people. I know there's been a lot. Hopefully you've taken down some notes. In the end, podcasting is tough. You got to count the cost. You got to know when to start. You got to know when to end. You got to have a plan. But it can be really a lot of fun. This is Jeff. This is the Roni Zone podcast. We're not always going to talk about podcasts unless that's what you really, really want. But leave some notes in the comments. If you're a listener from the old Once Upon a Time fan podcast, let me know in the comments. So go ahead, please like and subscribe to this podcast. Hit the little notification bell. And until next time, this is Jeff. See you later. Bye.